I'm doing this video for people that might want to hear the story. I did something in my youth that really was kind of out of the box. I have always been a big Red Wings fan. I used to go down to the games with my mom and a guy who used to take her out after my dad passed. We used to go to Tiger games, Red Wings games. That's when the Red Wings were bad. When the Tigers were bad. He worked at GM and people would always offer him tickets. And anyway, uh, probably about 15 years on the road, I had about 15, between 10 and 15 years of problem drinking. And I quit drinking because of an article that Mitch Albom wrote December 23rd, 1989. It's on his personal website with different articles that he wrote. Bob Probert was my favorite Red Wing because when I used to go back when the Wings were known as Dead Wings and ownership was different, Norris's didn't understand hockey, didn't have a GM that could make shrewd moves. They always got pushed around. Well, when Bob Probert was drafted, the description of Bob at that time was he could be the Red Wings' answer to Clark Gillies, describing him as a player he believed he would project to be. Well, back in those days, you didn't have websites or newspapers detailing guys that got drafted, and they didn't give insight to prospects. But hearing Jimmy Devellano say that Bob was my guy, and it took him a few years to come up, and in following hockey for all these years, I've learned once the Wings got good, the bigger guys a lot of times take longer to develop because they have to learn to be able to skate with a bigger body, more weight, and get their balance. Unbeknownst to me, Bob had an alcohol problem when he was drafted. And shortly after he was drafted, a couple months, his father died on my 21st birthday. So I kind of have two tie-ins to my recovery because in the fall of '87, I made the decision to get treatment, outpatient treatment. I set everything up myself. I did not talk with my family about it, though I had alienated my family for many years with my behavior. And I wanted to change. Part of that reason for change was my younger sister had gotten married that summer, the summer of '87. And shortly thereafter, she announced she was pregnant with my niece, who is now nearly 30 years old. So I had a combination of reasons. I wanted to have a better life. I wanted to have a different outlook. I was in really a dead end job with no possibility for growth. Once I got sober, I started to realize how god awful the job was. That winter in November, December, I applied at Little Caesars to become a manager trainee. And having always been the worker bee, it was a tough transition for me. But it was a great place to work because there was a lot of training and we get to hear a lot of inside stuff about the Red Wings. We'd have one of the stores I worked at, we were near where the old headquarters for Little Caesars was. We get security people coming in there, people who announced for the visiting teams coming in to order food, and occasionally we would get players, guys like Ed Moats, Bob Picard, Robert Picard, Lee Norwood, and they little known thing at that time. I don't know whether it's any longer true any longer, but the players had a special card that entitled them to a free visa. They didn't abuse it, but they used it. Well, after working there for about a year and a half, and really, I mean, we heard a lot of stuff going on with the Wings that you'd almost like you're employed by the Red Wings, you'd hear different stuff going on. Well, it was about the time Bob was having different drinking things, and because the papers didn't always give the full extent of the story, but they gave him a lot of criticism. Bob had a drinking problem and had a few accidents. He wrapped a car around a light pole in downtown Detroit. At the time, I remember thinking, God, they ain't so bad. And then when I saw his book, it had a picture of the car, and it was a pretty bad accident. About a year and a half into my working there, maybe almost 2 years. Not actually, yeah, about 3 weeks into my sobriety in April of '88. Um, the Wings had made the playoffs, and they hadn't made it very often back then. So it was kind of exciting because you kind of heard a lot. And then in May, there was an incident. Probert was being monitored for drinking, and so was Peter Klima. Well, both of them in Edmonton got arrested at a bar called Goose Looney's. And it was the middle of the series, so it was very embarrassing. They had one more game to go, and the team played like they're embarrassed. They got their ass beat. And next day, I happened to have the day off. I drove down to Joe Louis, went to the players' entrance. I thought, here I am. I've been in treatment since the fall. And a couple of times I'd had a beer or two. And it'd been about 3 weeks since I'd had a drink. And I went down there to try and see if I could help Bob. And his entrance told me to hang on. and he got Doug McLean. Doug McLean was his coach at the time. Come out and talk to me, and I sat in the Wings locker room, and he asked me a bunch of questions about me, and I answered him, and he goes, you need to take care of yourself, which I did, but always wishing for the best for Bob. Having lost my dad early on, and Bob lost his dad at 17, I lost my dad at 7. We had very similar paths. About a year and a half later, I was going home from work, and a gal's car had sold out. And part of my thing when I stopped drinking was I tried to change who I was and tried to be kinder, gentler. And I was making a lot of big changes in my life. I'd been a constant drinker almost every day, and I'd gone from no drinking, from all drinking, no drinking. And I didn't really have any emotional support at home, though my family was happy that I was getting sober. Um, I ended up staying with her for 3 or 4 hours. Our friend came to get her, and she mentioned that we were in my Probert jersey. She mentioned that Bob came to the bar, and just to mention her name. And if he's in there, she would introduce me. Well, a week later, I was coming to work. I said, what the heck? Wings had just played. Bob had not dressed. And he came in not a minute or two behind me. And as she poured me a Coke, I heard her scream out, Bob, Bob, Bob. And she made sure that I met him, and he thought it was kind of cool. I was wearing my Probert jersey, and he asked me to sit down in the booth with him. The first questions he asked me was what made me such a big fan of his. And I could have said the hockey because I did like the way he played. I liked the way he fought. He's a big guy. He kept all the troublemakers off the Wings' best players. But to me, the article of him bearing his soul about the struggle with his alcoholism, that was it. And he then proceeded to be very encouraging. And then he asked me on my sobriety date. At the time, I knew it was kind of a crock because he gave me his as 1 year, 1 day after mine. He goes, I'm going to beat your sobriety. Now, me being not even 6 foot, Bob 6'4", there's no way as a professional hockey player I could ever be his match on the ice, but in sobriety, it was something inside me that made me want to win. And that was very precious to me. And I ended up thinking later on, which ended up being true, he was not sober. He'd had a couple more alcohol incidents, and I didn't see him for about 8 years. I left Little Caesars. I was working at Computer Arena where the Plymouth Whalers used to play. My first day on the job, my boss was walking me through and giving me a tour, and Zamboni's coming out, and there's a man with two kids out on the ice. I'm not paying attention. I'm trying to take in everything first day of work, and first day of work, and no matter where you work, it always ends up being somewhat overwhelming. Well, my boss, Mark Gollins, played in the minors with Bob, and it was Bob who was on the ice. And he skated over, and after 8 years, he remembered who I was. And Mark was like going, like, give me this look like you know him. And Bob asked me if I was still clean, and it'd been nearly 10 years at that point. It's about 20 years ago. And I told him yes. And he goes, okay, he's good. And skated away. You can keep him. I've heard various people in the media badmouth Bob Probert. What he did for me, encouraging me, remembering me when no one else gave me a moment of time, the struggle that is every day. People who have not been an alcoholic or a drug addict have no idea how hard it is just to get through a day, an hour. And working in food, because there is so much aggravation. There's a lot of people who are alcoholics that relapse. The fact that I have not relapsed in 28 years speaks to how I conditioned myself to handle that. I will always be eternally grateful. He was not only one of my favorite players, one of my sports heroes. He was a personal hero to me. I'm not sure I would still be here if it were not for the words he gave me back in 1989. And here, as I coming up on 30 years of sobriety and having listened to different media people badmouth Bob Probert, I'm here to say you only saw one side of him. And anybody that was a teammate of his or a friend of his would never badmouth him. Do you have faults? Yeah, we all do. But who are we to pass judgment on someone else when we have our own faults? He, in many ways, I've come to believe, was like the brother I never had. And through all the early years of recovery, he was my rock because Bob always stood up for his teammates. He always stood up for the underdog, and he stood up for me. There are times, been gone 6 years. There are times it hurts me to not have been able to say, Bob, you saved my life. You changed my life. You changed who I am. Sometimes it only takes one person to do that. People badmouth him more. Bring up the things that, he never hurt anyone with his drinking driving. He could have, but he didn't. I could have, but I didn't. It has been nearly 20 years since I met him. Nearly 30 years that I'm sober. And there are a lot of things people are and are not. But I have a special bond with Bob. I will always be eternally grateful because I knew he always had my back, even though he wasn't there. I just needed to share this.